all very much for being such a motivated audience. I can see that already. I'm not used to being surrounded by a group of such knowledgeable and motivated people. You're not like traditional students, except you are like traditional students in one important way, and that is you're very interested in your own well-being, but you might not be as self-aware as perhaps you could be. And when I talk about motivation, I'm really talking about getting to know yourself, because most of you, based upon your introductions, are in the business of helping other people. So how can you help other people unless you know who you are and what motivates you? So what I'd like you to do, very simply, in one sentence, on a piece of paper, write down what motivated you to come here today. Something I have to tell you right now, I'm not a motivational speaker, I'm a motivational scientist. If you read things about motivation and you look at the newspaper and you go on YouTube, people tend to say, you know what? Colin, you are now highly motivated. It doesn't work that way. There are many, many misconceptions about motivation, including ones that you have yourself. Many of you just wrote down an answer on a piece of paper, and I will contend that what you wrote down does not reflect your true motivation. As I explained earlier, we all have this misconception that people who don't think like us are unmotivated. So if you have a child or you're dealing with a coworker and they're not on the same level as you are, we tend to say, Selena is not motivated. Now, of course, we know that's not true. She's sitting in the front row, so she's very motivated. But motivated for what? You just can't look at motivation as this global construct, but you have to look at the task. And there's a lot of other things that you have to look at. But we want to be aware that most of us don't know what motivates us. That's what the research says. That's what your answers will say. If anybody else wants to volunteer, I'll show you that you haven't written down the actual motive, maybe the behavior, not the motive. Have any volunteers?
Colin.
Colin?
I actually put inspire others like her, but it was also, honestly, a little bit of self-promotion, because I want to educate people about what I do.
All right. So here we have a classic case of extrinsic motivation being here specifically for financial or personal gain.
Partly.
You okay with that?
Partly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's not a bad thing, but you see, he's an unusual case, because in most cases, people won't say that. Okay? They have this public face, and then the private face, they don't show you. So I admire your honesty and your candidness, and this was not this wasn't a setup, okay? But most of the time, genetics. How many of you think motivation is driven by genetics? Let's raise a hand. This is not a trick question. Okay, we got 3 people out of 48. Well, I hate to tell you this, but up to 70% of motivated behavior, things like anxiety, aggression, friendliness, dependability, all of those kind of factors have a genetic predisposition, up to 70%. And how do we figure that out? I know some of you are skeptical, right? You're skeptical? No? Nobody's skeptical?
Yes.
Be skeptical.
I am skeptical.
You take 2 twins, genetically identical twins, and you separate them at birth, and you see how they turn out raised in different environments. And based upon the differences, you can see how much variability in their behavior and their motives is based upon genetic factors. You will seek out opportunities. If you have diminished control beliefs, you will avoid opportunities. You will be that person that believes in luck because you don't feel you can control your destiny. And in a real practical sense, I was in human resources for 20 years. The question I would always ask people, I worked in top-level organizations all around the world, and I would say, can you tell me how you got your last job? People would say, well, you know, I really wanted this job in financial services because I'm very interested in creating wealth for other people. So I put my resume together, I put my plan together, and that's the job I got. And then other people will say, you know, well, I was out of work for 4 or 5 months, and a friend of mine told me about this job, and he brought me into the organization, and it really worked out well for me. Okay, so what can you figure out from there? Person A, strong control belief. Person B, diminished control belief. And that really transcends to a lot of the different behaviors we do. You might want to know, what is the #1 strategy that people use when they have low self-worth? And you're all going to debate this with me. I know it. But you have done it sometime in your life. Students do it all the time.
Minimize the event.
Well, that's one strategy, absolutely. My son's really good at that. Gets in trouble all the time. No big deal.
Actually be aggressive, actually become aggressive.
Well, that is a protective strategy, but I'm talking about it from an academic perspective. Those are great answers, but it's procrastination.
No, that was a given.
Okay, so you may think, oh, procrastination, I do that all the time, I have self-worth, right? Come on, how many of you think that? You're all a high self-worth group here. You are. If you didn't have high self-worth, you wouldn't be here, okay? Because you're trying to improve yourself, you're open, you're honest, you're candid, right? Procrastination is a strategy that people use because they're afraid of failing. Now, some of you may disagree with that, right? Not you, not afraid of failing. Well, here's the deal. And all these strategies, from setting goals that are so easy to get, to setting, like, I know some students during the summer, they take 5 classes in 6 weeks. And then at the end of the 5 weeks, and end of the 6 weeks, they say, you know what? If I didn't take 5 classes, I would have gotten all A's. So it's not me that's responsible. It's a low control belief, and it's the classes that serve as the insulation to the person, so they don't have to say, you know what, if I studied more, I would have done well. It's not really how many classes I took. So if I take these classes and I fail, I have a reason to justify it to myself and to other people. Procrastination works the exact same way. If you procrastinate and fail, why have you failed? Because you waited to the last minute. If I didn't wait to the last minute, I could have done a great job on this. But here's what makes it even more confusing. Lots of times you procrastinate and you succeed. So you reinforce a bad strategy under the perception that you work better when you wait till the last minute. Okay? That flies in the face of every piece of research in the history of the world. It's like cramming for a test. Cramming for a test, yeah, you get an A. And then 2 hours later, I ask you a question, I don't know. Okay? All these kinds of strategies are insulating beliefs about the self, and those strategies are used to protect you and kind of give you the excuse, and I hear it from students all the time, so they feel better about themselves when in fact they do fail. And the curious thing is, a lot of these strategies actually do work in the short term, but sooner or later you will encounter a situation where you procrastinate and fail, and then you have an even deeper self-worth problem. The change model, which is the last chapter in my book, and maybe the most important and relevant, because you have all these great strategies, and you're almost a certified motivational detective. But then it comes time to actually implement, and you people, and me as well, we are implementers. We create change, but we encounter obstacles and roadblocks. So the 5-step strategy, first, if you're trying to initiate change in someone else, you have to create that awareness. Soon we've done that, okay? Next, we have to convince the person that there are actually plausible or realistic alternatives that will work better for them. What we're really doing in the second stage, and and I know you know the conceptual change model, I've adapted it for motivation. You need to create some doubt. You cannot expect someone else to change their motivational patterns and ultimately their behaviors if it's working for them. And in many cases, it's working for people, even though they may not be entirely satisfied, it's good enough. You've got to get down to the core belief and you say, you know what? There's a little other thing you should think about. Instill doubt in the person. Maybe if you're smoking 60 cigarettes a day, it may eventually affect your health. They may not believe it. That's when you come out with the data. That's when you parade 6 people across the room that have had throat cancer or mouth cancer. There was a defining theme for what I call the motivational leaders, and that was they had some sort of influence in their life that could have been a spiritual influence, it could have been another person, could have been a coach, but they all knew that there was somebody that gave them feedback and guidance and direction. The other common element was they all felt in control. Even someone like Amanda Boxtel, who when she was 22 years old, an Olympic caliber athlete, ran into a tree when skiing and was paralyzed from the waist down. It took her 5 years to go through this process, but she did. And she feels totally in control of her life. So the control factor is also really important. So those kind of things in tandem create a motivational leader, and as a potential motivational detective, this model and providing that scaffolding and identifying those core beliefs and pulling away the protective layers on people will ultimately allow you to influence their behavior. And if you really think about it, we're all in the same boat here. Sometimes we recognize, we become aware of things and we put up these shields, whether it's a challenging relationship or it's a dissatisfying job where you're not content, or whatever. Maybe it's your own physical fitness, oh, I want to do this, and we tend to disguise it. But by using this model and really being self-aware, and a lot of the strategies I talk about, those self-awareness strategies, you can actually change the motivation of yourself as well as others. So, thank you very much for listening. It was 10 minutes too long. If you have any questions, let me know.